Anyway, so typically the format of this meeting, I hold it every Thursday at the same time, which is supposed to be at 6 p.m. I'm sorry. Anyway, and so the format is just some general announcements, and then I usually do, I guess, what you'd call a baby lecture, just a very short review of some of the main concepts from the chapter, and then just turn it over to questions, whether they be questions sometimes about specific problems that we can work out for people, or questions of a more general nature. And so, some people who feel like they've got a solid grasp of it will tune in for the first 10 or 15 minutes and then take off, and others, will hang out for the whole time. That's kind of up to you. This is not mandatory, so you're not losing points if you're not here in a given meeting. It's just meant to be helpful to you. So I wanted to just share a couple things with you that I think trip people up early in the course. I'm going to share my screen. So the first thing, and I tried to address it in the announcements, was this issue of, I think I put it on an announcement that was called "Don't Freak Out," because it makes people freak out every semester, which is that when you start doing work in Wiley Plus, you've probably already seen this. If you don't finish it in that single sitting and then you sign out of it, it'll update your grade in the grade book, and it will look like you failed the assignment. But the good news is you should be able to go back in and continue working on that assignment. These aren't designed so that you have to do it all in a single sitting. Some of them are just too long as it is. I know, Jen, you had said that you had some problem getting back in, and so we might talk about that after, so we're not forcing everybody else to have that conversation with us if they're not having similar problems. So that's the first thing, is just, don't freak out about that issue. It's a known issue, and there's not much we can do to change it. So, whoops. All right. So the second thing is in my weekly announcements. So let me go to this week 2 announcement. There's a couple things that you might want to know about. The first is this additional study content. Some of you had already asked questions about it. The question was like, is this mandatory, or is this something we should focus our time and energy on? And my answer would be, it's supplemental. And so some people have found it very helpful. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. You'll see that all it is a Google Doc that I created, that I put a bunch of links to things in there. So these links are lectures I've recorded on various topics. That are just YouTube videos of those lectures. So those are things you can use. The things that people tell me are most valuable to them in here are these self-tests. So this is something that Wiley put out on the older version of the textbook, but they don't have out with the newer version. And what I find is these self-tests, the wording of them feels and looks a lot like the exam questions. That's why I included them here. So this is just a link to some Wiley content. And then for these self-tests, I have, let's see. Yeah, you'll see when we get down to starting in chapter 3, where it starts to get really, not really, but it gets more complicated. I'll do like a self-test video walkthrough, which is just me taking the self-test myself and describing why I'm answering each question the way I'm answering it. Again, some students go, yeah, I did that, it did nothing for me. And others are like, no, it really helps just to hear your logic of how you flow through these problems. So what I would say is, this is a tool that's here for your use. Do the required self-study first, because that's part of your grade. And a lot of people don't really use this until they're preparing for the exam, and then they'll go through the self-tests and find that it's a helpful way to prepare for the exams. Let's see. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, just as sort of like general information, is, let me go back to, is in the announcements, I created this announcement that says, The Secret to Success in This Class. If you haven't read it, please read it. I never put this announcement up before. This is new this semester. So last semester, I had like 4 or 5 students who missed passing the class by like 2%. And of course, I was the bad guy because I didn't round up 2%. But just so you know, BYU Idaho is pretty rigid. In other words, they don't want us, they're rigid. I'll just put it that way. That is the way they do things there. So just, you know, I teach for BYU Idaho as a part-time. I just teach 1 class. Well, I'm teaching 2 this semester. I teach for Arizona State University, also part-time, and then I teach full-time for Eastern Arizona College. And so of all the schools I've worked with, BYU is definitely much more rigid in their way of doing things. They give us as instructors very little flexibility on how we can alter the course. You'll see I've added extra credit every other week. All of the max I'm allowed to let that extra credit add up to is 1% of the grade. That's their rule, and so I can't bend it. Well, I can't break it, and I probably can't really bend it even. Anyway, what I'm saying in this just to paraphrase this secret to success is that when people see how the grade is weighted, that 50% of the grade is exams, they tend to focus all their energy on the exams. And I think it's important to focus real energy on the exams because it's half of the grade. But the exams are really hard. And what I mean by that is sometimes even people who are really smart don't do as well as they would like to on the exams. And so they neglect all this other work and then focus on the exams. And then at the end, they're in trouble. So things like required self-study resources, that's 5% of your grade that is like an automatic A if you just do it. All you have to do is look at those things and you get an A on that. Homework, you get three chances, right? So this is controllable. You can take the time and you can improve that homework grade and get it usually up to an A. Quizzes are a little tougher, but they're only worth 3% of your grade. And then this other assignment, this stuff is, almost all of it is like if you just do it, just put in a fair effort into it, it's kind of an easy A. So what I'm getting at is here, there's 25, 30, 33, 40% of the grade that is super controllable. And then there's 60% that is somewhat controllable, but harder to control because it's an exam setting. And so as an example, if you were to average 100% on that controllable work, you could still pass the class even if you only averaged a 50% on the exams. And so what I find is typically the people who are failing by just a few points, if we go back and look, things like the required self-study will have like a 70% average grade, or the homework will have a 70% average grade. And then when they struggled with the exams, it just kind of did them in. Whereas the people who are passing, say, with a low or a mid C, they've controlled these controllable items, and then even when they struggled with the exam, they still were able to get through the class. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you. There's plenty of people who get A's and B's too. It's not like it's an impossible class. I just want you to be aware that it's an exercise in controlling the things you can control, because there will be some parts that are harder to control. Exams are always harder to control in any class. Anyway, so I just want to reiterate that in case you hadn't seen that announcement that I put out. Check the announcements each week, because in them I'm putting, usually they're the same. It's just saying here's the assignments this week and here's, you know, they're due by this day, but they're worth checking out. All right, so before I try to get into a little mini lecture on the content of this week, are there any questions about, I guess, non-content stuff, more like, you know, how do I do this, or how is the class set up, or things like that?
I had a question about Wiley. So maybe if it'll just make more sense if I just go ahead and share the screen. I don't know. I've never actually done this before, so let's see how this works.
Let me make sure I'm set up so you can share screen.
Okay.
Because I have to tell it whether or not, let's see. To stop sharing mine, and then I have to tell it. All right, now you can share your screen, Jacob.
Okay. So let's see here. Okay, so right here, I'm just like going through the Wiley on the electronically. They have these related exercise materials.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to click on it, and it's got good practice stuff, but there's no answers to it. Do you know where I could find answers to those just to get good practice? Because I'm not really sure if I'm doing it right or not.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is, I think whoever conceived this program just tried to make like the regular textbook into an HTML format instead of saying, hey, we could do all sorts of crazy stuff with this and make it much more interactive. They do have an interactive tool that can help you. It's called Orion, Orion. And
Okay.
if you go like if you go
That's,
back to read, study, practice, yeah,
is that right here?
yes, and you can also link it from read, study, read, study, practice section. Yeah, so no, this isn't. So I mean, yes, this is Orion, but yeah. So go up to the upper left there, Orion. I'm pointing at my screen, like you can see. Sorry. Uh,
Right here?
yeah,
Okay.
and then from that you can, yeah, you choose maybe that was the same. Sorry, but you choose the chapter, and what it does is it in essence takes you through some exercises, and then based on how you do on it, it'll build additional exercise sets until you, and I'll tell you, I did some unscientific testing and found that students who were using Orion and getting themselves to like an 80% proficiency level were scoring about 10 percentage points higher on the exams. But I also have some students who are like, I tried Orion and it didn't do much. I didn't, what I think is we all learn differently. Well, I don't think that. I know that. I've been teaching long enough to recognize that different people learn differently. And so sometimes you just have to try these tools and say, is this tool helping me gain proficiency here, or is it just busy work? Some people do the homework and they're like, I got this. But most of us are not so lucky. Most of us have to do additional practice. So the short answer is those links in the eText, to my knowledge, there's not any keys provided to that information.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, I know, I think it's dumb too. That's the technical term for it. It's dumb. Um, but the Orion is a pretty cool tool that I've had students have success with.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. I just wanted to know because I'm just trying to do every single thing that's in the textbook and I just couldn't find solutions. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right or not. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll definitely take a look at Orion and your links in the Google Sheet.
Okay. Any other questions about
I have a
Tish?
quick question about the paper
Okay.
subject. And I've read the comments and all of that, and so I know that it doesn't have to be accounting related.
Right.
But the paper, the articles that I've been looking at, my particular subject, there isn't a lot in the library site, but there was a link to a place that had some articles. Can I do that? Or does the article have to be in the library site?
So it doesn't have to be in the library site. The only stipulation is that it has to be from a professional journal, um, or an academic journal, depending on what you're doing. And so it can't be from like a periodical like Newsweek or something like that. And so that does limit it down. But I think their intent is they're wanting to get students looking at those journals that have a stronger peer reviewed sort of background behind them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll send you a link to what I'm looking at, and you can say, too sketchy.
Too sketchy. It's like, I
It's
found this on Facebook. It's great, like that.
no, it's not Facebook. It's ISO, and it's because it's regulatory is where my passion is, and so it's an article about some regulatory
You're
stuff.
one of those people
I am one of those people.
trying to make rules for us, and we're just trying to get our job done.
No, I'm just trying to follow the rules because I'm a rule follower.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Feel free to either, because if you submit it and it's not, all I'm going to do is reply, hey, this doesn't meet the minimum required standard because of this, and let you resubmit it. Or you can email me if you want to just have me look at it before you submit it.
Okay, thank you.
Whichever.
Sounds great.
And I will say on the paper, as we get working on it more, because it's okay, this is not an English class, and I'm not, this is one of those assignments that honestly, if you just put in a reasonable effort, like I give you full credit. In other words, I don't think it's the scope of this class to like grade you on your grammar. I mean, if your grammar is atrocious, then I'll probably have to say, hey, you should probably visit the writing lab. But in other words, I wouldn't spend hours and hours on it. I would put in a reasonable effort, and you'll get full credit for it. I know I say that, and then I'll like ding somebody, and they'll be like, "What the heck? You said that." But in another life, I taught English for a couple semesters when I first started teaching college, but I'm no expert. I'll tell you that. Any other questions? And if you think of some, don't be afraid. You can pop in there. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to share with you just 4 little PowerPoint slides. Some of this will be super easy for some of you, and others will be like, oh, aha, like that. I don't know what you'll say. Probably if you're an aha sayer, you might say aha, but if you're not an aha sayer, you'll think of something else like ooh, or egads. I'm not sure. Let's see. So got a little PowerPoint here. So this first chapter just focuses on the basic financial statements. And so for some people, this is old hat. You know, you learned about it a long time ago, or you work in a job where you deal with them, or whatever. For other people, this is brand new. Like it's the first time they've ever seen these sorts of things. So the basic financial statements we're going to focus on in this chapter, or in this chapter and in this class, are the income statement, the statement of retained earnings, the balance sheet, and then the statement of cash flows. And really what these are, the best way I can put them is they are the summary of a business, written in a notation that people who are accustomed to them will find easy to follow. It's not always easy if you've never done it before, but hopefully in a couple weeks you'll be like, I can't believe that was ever hard for me. That's the hope. So the first one is the income statement, and the income statement has revenues and expenses. Revenues are money coming in through this, typically through your normal business operations, so through selling something. I own a business that's a rental storage, so my revenue that comes in is through the renting of storage units. My wife owns a business painting murals, and so her revenue is, she earns that by people paying her to paint really giant pictures on their walls. And then expenses is money that we pay out as part of our normal operating. So for my business, running storage, my expenses might be salaries and wage expenses for employees, mostly my kids doing work out there at the facility. They might be insurance expense or utilities. And on my wife's business, she spends a fair amount on paint, believe it or not, and paint brushes, and scaffolding and things like that. Anyway, so an income statement is a summary of revenue and expenses. Often they're written like this. You'll see the revenue in a single column, then the expenses all in a single column, and then a subtotal of all the total expenses, and then the revenue minus the expenses, and that's what's called net income.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is there, I know that for assets, and we're supposed to list it in order of liquidity.
Uh-huh.
What about expenses? I couldn't tell. I mean, is there a way? I mean, obviously salaries and wages seems to always be first, but then you get to interest and insurance and depreciation. Is there an order? Is there a pecking order on expenses?
So kind of. And what I mean by that is, for these assignments, there won't be. In real life, when you see these income statements, interest expense and interest expense and tax expenses often get listed down at the bottom, and especially we'll get into something called a classified income statement, which further breaks out some of the expenses into different categories, and then interest and taxes will be handled separately. So the short answer is not really, but you'll see kind of conventions as you look at them that often they're in the same order. The reason salaries and wages is so often first is because it's usually just the biggest expense most employers are dealing with, or most businesses are dealing with. So, but nothing that you have to worry about from a assignment or homework. Every once in a while, I don't think it happens in this class, but I use Pearson my accounting lab, and I remember them having a one where they, in the instructions, they tell you to put the expenses in alphabetical order, and that screws everybody up because nobody does that ever in real life. So anyway, short answer is no. And then later on, I'll say, well, remember how I told you no? Well, in this case, but we're now no. So that's the income statement. Revenue minus expenses gives you net income. If you have more expenses than you have revenue, you'll have a net loss, okay? So the next is what's called the statement of retained earnings. So on your left there is the income statement that we just looked at. And on the right is the statement of retained earnings, or sometimes they call it retained earnings statement. And retained earnings statement just shows what our retained earnings were at the beginning of the period, plus any net income, minus any dividends, and that gives us our retained earnings at the end of the period. Dividends are any profits of the business that the business pays out to its shareholders or owners. So for my storage, if I have a good month and I make $4,000 and I decide I'm going to pay out $1,000 to me and $1,000 to the one other owner, that would be a dividend. And so that reduces our retained earnings. All retained earnings really means is earnings or money that we've made, net income, that we are retaining or keeping in the business. So when a business makes a profit, revenue minus expenses, when it makes net income, their options are to either spend that money on something, maybe they're doing an expansion of their headquarters or something, or to pay it out to the owners in the form of a dividend, or to hold it. And that's usually what happens, is they just keep those earnings until they build up enough that they do then want to spend them on something. So that's the statement of retained earnings. Finally, we have the balance sheet. The balance sheet is a summary of the assets, the liabilities, and the equities of the business. And so assets are things that you own, okay? Usually things like cash, supplies, equipment, buildings, those are all assets. Liabilities are debts that are owed by the business. And then stockholders' equity, which is a more confusing and more vague term, just means the amount of the business that actually belongs to the owners. Think of it this way. If you bought a house and you paid $250,000 for the house, your asset would be $250,000. And then you took out a loan for that house of $250,000, then you would have an asset of $250,000 and a liability of $250,000 and equity of $0. None of that house belongs to you. It all belongs to the bank, your creditors. Now over time, you pay off $50,000. So now you have assets of $250,000, you have liabilities of $200,000, and you have equity of $50,000. Meaning now, if you were to have to, if you could liquidate that house at its asset value today, meaning sell it, then you and pay off the amount you owe, what you would have left over that actually belongs to you is $50,000. So that's what equity means, is the amount that actually belongs to the owners. And you can see that that's really only comes from two places. One is called common stock, and common stock represents money that the owners have paid into the business, right? If I purchase stock in Microsoft, I'm a part owner of Microsoft, and I've placed equity or put money into that business. And then the second place is retained earnings. The business makes a profit and doesn't pay that money out to me as an owner. That's the only place my stockholders' equity comes from. So again, balance sheet, assets, liabilities, and equity. Recognize that an income statement measures revenue and expenses across a period of time. So this is for the month ended October 31st. So what that means is from the beginning of October to the end of October, we had this much revenue come in and paid out this much expense. Whereas, or as opposed to a balance sheet, which shows us the balance of these accounts at a given moment. This is on October 31st, 2017. We have this much assets, this much liabilities, and this much equity. So income statements measure across a period of time, and balance sheets give you like a snapshot at a given moment in time. And that'll actually be important in a chapter or two. In other words, just grab onto the concept now, but don't worry too much about it. Finally, a statement of cash flows just shows all of the cash flowing into the business and out of the business. So we receive cash and we pay out cash. And it's split into three sections, sorry, the operating activities section, the investing activities section, and the financing activities section. And again, we'll go more into depth on this later. It's enough to recognize that operating activities are the normal buying and selling that the business does as part of its business, where investing is the purchase of long-term assets for my business. If I buy land or buy more buildings to make into storage buildings, that would be an investing activity. And then financing is the borrowing of money or the receiving of money through the sale of stock or the paying off of those sorts of things. So that's in a nutshell. I don't know how long that took, but a 15-minute sort of lecture on the chapter. Any thoughts or questions that came up? And like Tish did, where she just busted in with a question, I really prefer that. So don't be afraid if I'm saying something, because if you don't, we'll get to the end and then you'll ask the question. I'll be like, I don't remember. My brain is not a steel trap. I would say it's not what it used to be, but it never was. So it's what I got. I do my best with it. So no questions on that. Great. So at this stage, then, typically what we do is ask, are there any specific questions on homework problems that you've been trying to work out that you're stuck on, or any other questions I can answer for you?
Actually, I was just thinking, because there was one of those things that I showed in the screen share. I didn't really know how to answer it. Maybe we could go over that if you don't mind. Now I gotta bring it up again. Let me sorry, I just gotta bring it back up. It was just to do with like, you had to identify, where is it? It's right here. Okay, I'm just gonna share the screen again real quick. No, sorry.
I can't be mad at you for making me wait since I, didn't show up for an hour and a half late to my own meeting or whatever.
Oh, no worries.
I have to be cool about everything, like for the whole semester, I think. That's the rule.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so let me go back. Oh, wait, where did it go? Okay. Okay, this one. So I wasn't really sure how to distinguish between these. It's just operating activities versus investing or financing activities.
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of struggled to distinguish between them.
Sure. All right. So first of all, anything that is an expense or a revenue is going to be an operating activity. So that is, think of it this way. I have a rental storage business. So my normal operating activities are the renting of storage sheds and then the maintaining of my property and my buildings. And so any money I bring in from doing that, or that I pay out from doing that, those are my normal operating activities. But I also have exceptional money that comes in at times or gets paid out at times. For example, let's say I had a moving van that I kept, and after several years I decided to sell it. I would probably make money on the sale of that van, but it's not a normal part of my regular operations. Okay, so anytime I bring money in through the sale of what's called a long-term asset, in other words, it's not the things I typically sell, that's my inventory. Instead, it's things like property, equipment. If I bring money in from the sale of that, or I pay money out from the purchase of that, that's going to be part of my investing activities, because these are long-term assets I'm dealing with. Okay. And then I'm just drawing a blank all of a sudden. And then anything where I'm going to bring money in through borrowing, so I go to the bank and get a loan, or through selling shares of ownership, so I issue stock in my business and I have investors put money in. Or if I pay money out for that, like I pay off a loan or I pay a dividend to my shareholders, those are called financing activities because that's cash flow that is coming in and out from financing, from borrowing or from equity financing. So I know I probably just said a bunch of stuff, and it's, you know, it's a half a lumen brighter, but it's still not really clear. And that's
Well,
partially because the more you work with it, the more you're like, okay, that's clearly this thing.
well, I think that actually helped a lot. I think I actually can answer it now. So then
Okay.
cash receipts from customers, that'd be operating, that'd be financing for cash paid to stockholders, cash received from issuing new common stock, that'd be financing, cash paid to suppliers, that would be operating.
Yes. Although I can't see what you're talking about. I'm seeing operating or action plan solution down at the bottom.
Wait, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing Wiley Plus, Chapter 1, Introduction to Financial Statements. It says solution, cost of running property, expense.
Oh, what the heck? That's not even the screen that I have up. That's weird. So mine says indicate which of the statement of cash flows each item would appear: operating activities, O; investing activities, I; or financing activities. Huh.
Do you have two screens?
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay, let me try that.
You're probably
How about
sharing.
Does that work now?
Right now, I'm still seeing the same thing.
Huh. I don't know how to. That's really weird. Okay. What if I go new share? Oh, okay, wait. I think I know why. Sorry, that was my bad. Let me try that one more time. I'm just not really used to. I've never shared this is actually the first time I've ever shared my screen, so I just don't know how it works very well. But let's try that once more. Let's see if that works.
See, I'm seeing you click on those, but it's still showing me the same screen. So if it's opening them in another window, I'm not seeing that.
Okay.
I might drag those over into this. Oh, there it is.
Okay, that's the one I was looking at.
Okay. Yeah, so cash received from customers, you said operating, right?
Yep.
Yep. And then you cash paid to the stockholders, that's part of your financing activities.
Yep.
Cash received from issuing new stock is a financing activity. Cash paid to suppliers, that's operating. It's part of your normal day-to-day operations. Cash paid to purchase a new office building, that would be an investing activity.
Okay, that actually makes sense. That explanation you gave. So I think I understand it now. So that's good.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, I guess I can unshare my screen then.
You know, I know like we're all like used to Zoom already because then everybody's like sick of it. Like our youth at church, because I keep going like, do you guys want to do some type of thing? And they're just like, no, we're zoomed out through seminary and through school. But if you think about it, it's a pretty amazing tool. In other words, we have people, I mean, last semester I had people in Italy and in Japan, and the fact that we can share our screens and stuff like that. You know, before you would have had to send a runner from Italy to bring it to here across the ocean, and he would have died along the way, and it would have been a whole new person who brought us the message. But now, almost instantaneous. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out good things to do with our youth at church because they're just like, no, we're good. Like, you guys don't want to get online and do it? Nope. No. So we'll see how we can work that out. If you have
Well,
any great ideas, even Pinterest doesn't have a lot of great ideas, and that's weird. Anybody have any other questions about the content or anything else this week?
I do have a question. That's regard of the exam next week.
Uh-huh.
So it's on chapter 1 and chapter 2.
Correct.
What are the main points? Is it more definition, or is it more knowing how to put things in which statements, or in what order to put it in, or?
Sure. So I'm glad you asked. First of all, I was going to be mean and say the main points are chapters 1 and 2, but I will show you where there's a little study guide that will help. I always think it's funny that students say, "Do we have a study guide?" And I always say, "Yeah, it's called a book." But then they don't laugh. They just sort of look at me deadpan. But I'm going to share my screen with you again, and I'll show you these very awesome study guides they have that a lot of people miss for some reason. So I'm going to go to the modules. Am I sharing now? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So like if I go to week 3, right here where it says, like right above where it has the exam, there's this review for the exam.
Oh, they had that for the economics.
And if you click on that, it's easy to lose in all of this text, but right here at the bottom, it says review the checklist for the exam. And actually it's the same checklist for all the exams, because what it does is it downloads a PDF, and the PDF is broken down by exam. So when I open up the PDF, like the first one, so here's, it has exam 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through the final. And then it shows you like bullet points for each chapter. And I don't know if they want you to know this, but I'm pretty sure whoever made this, I say they, like it's conspiratorial, right? Like we're all on the same, whoever designed the course, what they did is they went through the exam and then they read the question and then they wrote this bullet point to say what you would need to know to answer that question. In other words, whoever put this together was looking at the exam while they did it. And so if people will just take the time to read through this and feel confident in each of these areas, they're going to do better on the exam. And instead of having to just say my study guide is the whole 2 chapters, really here now we've got it whittled down to about 15, 18 bullet points, maybe 20, I don't know. But so the short answer is use this this exam checklist, and it will really dial in your study and help you know what you need to look at. But you watch, we'll get to exam 4 and someone will say, man, I just feel like I don't know what to study. And then I'll tell them, well, are you using the checklist? And they'll be like, I didn't even know that was there. It happens every semester. And I feel bad for them because they've been like going on their own. Maybe it's a metaphor for like, the spirit, where we just sort of try to like fight through it and do it on our own. And finally one day we go, oh, if I just humbled up and listened, I wouldn't have had to suffer so much. I don't know. I don't want you to suffer, so use this.
And then something totally different from the exam is the group that you just started for teaching.
Uh-huh.
What does it really entail?
I'm sorry, what?
What does it really entail? You're supposed to know how to get that exercise done, or?
Yeah, so what it entails is that you sign up for, in essence, it's 2 problems throughout the semester. Yeah. And what you do is they are homework problems, so they're problems that exist in the homework set, and you record yourself working it out. A lot of people like to put together Excel spreadsheets to do it. Other people don't feel very confident doing that, and so they just will work the problem out ahead of time, and then bring it up on a screen share and just sort of talk everybody through how they worked it out. So one of BYU Idaho's kind of pillars to the way they do education is that students should teach one another, right? And a lot of students hate that. They're like, I don't want to teach one another. I want a teacher to teach me. That being said, I was here before they had that, and I've been here after, and it really has been a blessing, because I think you have to learn something a little more deeply before you're prepared to share it with other people. And so as much as it stinks, it's usually a pretty good exercise. So all that's really entailed, all that it really entails is recording yourself working out the problem in whatever way works best for you to do that.
And you post it by the first of the week then?
Yeah, I think it's by Tuesday. Okay. And so that's one you have to make note of when your weeks are, and then maybe even get a little head start on that. Good news, it's only twice in the semester. You can do it. Did you feel that confidence exuding?
Okay.
All right.
All my questions for today.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. So I feel like we're winding down. You got a natural feeling where the meeting's just coming to an end. It's like fast and testimony meeting when you're kind of seeing, is anybody else going to go, or do we just let this thing taper off, right? Maybe that's where we're at right now. We would just like to have a fast and testimony meeting, right? Like just get to go to church. Although I'm liking the home church, it's pretty cool. Makes my job easier in some ways. Anyway, I appreciate you taking the time. And again, I apologize for the screw up earlier. And I will do my best to endeavor to not let that happen again. Anybody willing to offer a closing prayer for us?
I can give one.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for Spirit that we're in the class and for the guidance that we have received from Brother Fox in the material of this week. We ask Thee to help us apply the input into our study, and we thank Thee for all the things that You gave us. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night, and see you next week on time. I promise.
Thank
I
you.
just had a question
Bye.
for you, but it's more of a personal question to just ask you one-on-one. So
Okay.
I guess we wait
So
till.
you want me to hold off and like stop recording?
Sure.
Can we hang around and just listen? Because it sounds like it might be fun.